بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إن شئت سهلا. اللهم ارزقنا نيات خالصة لوجهك الكريم. لله تعالى. So, the Shaykh, may Allah protect him, said, and he's talking about the Qibla, how to determine the direction of the Qibla. There is no difference of opinion among the scholars of Islam that the person who sees Al-Kaaba faces the Kaaba in the prayer itself. Meaning, if you're in front of the Kaaba and you can see the Kaaba, there's no difference of opinion among the scholars that you have to face the Kaaba. So the difference of opinion comes into, not the difference of opinion, but the way they explain how to determine facing the Kaaba is when you're away from Mecca. They have difference of opinion about the one who is far away from the Kaaba. What does he have to face? Does he have to make ijtihad to face the Kaaba itself, or to direct himself towards the direction of the Kaaba in general? So what would be his aim? They both say you have to face the direction of the Kaaba. There's no disagreement on that as well. All the scholars agree that you have to face the direction of the Kaaba. But when you face the direction of the Kaaba, would it be in a general way, or would it be to your goal, your aim would be the Kaaba itself? And Imam Shafi'i said you need to face the Kaaba, the building of the Kaaba itself, the Jirm of Kaaba. Abu Hanifa said you face its direction in a general way. So for example, if I'm facing you, Hajj Joe, like this, if I turn my face like this, I'm still considered facing you. So that's the difference would be something like that. And we'll discuss it further here. So what does he have to face? Does he have to make ijtihad to face the Kaaba itself, or direct himself towards the direction of the Kaaba in general? So he does ijtihad to reach what? What would be his target to hit? To reach facing the Kaaba itself, or to reach what is the direction without it being an obligation to reach facing the Kaaba? What would be his target, his aim? Would his target be the Kaaba itself or the direction of the Kaaba? In this matter, there's a difference of opinion among the scholars. Imam Shafi'i, rahmatullah alayh, said, and others said, one needs to face the Kaaba itself. So when far away from the Kaaba, he makes ijtihad to direct himself towards the Kaaba itself. Abu Hanifa and others said it is enough to make ijtihad to face the direction of the Kaaba in general, without it being an obligation to face the building of the Kaaba, but rather direction towards the Kaaba in a general way. The proof or base for all of this is the saying of Allah Ta'ala, وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ وَحَيْثُ مَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ. Whenever you want to pray, then face the direction of the Masjid al-Haram and direct yourselves, meaning your chest, direct your chest towards its direction, the direction of Masjid al-Haram, which is the Kaaba. This is the base. The term shatara that is used in this verse, it means direction. So to face the direction of the Kaaba. And the scholars are unanimous agreement about that. That you face the direction of the Kaaba. It means take the direction of the Kaaba when you pray, and wherever you are, take the direction when you pray. Meaning, in the obligatory prayer, whenever you want to pray, you need to face the Kaaba. And also in the optional prayer, you need to face the Kaaba, with the exception of the optional prayer that one is riding an animal. This is the base of all what the different imams and scholars said. Whatever any scholar says about this issue, it has to comply with this base, with this verse of the Quran, with this proof. It is not permissible to say something that belies and contradicts this base. So the scholars didn't contradict this verse, regardless of what they said. Remember when we mentioned this saying, some scholars said that? They're going in conformity with this verse. To make the issue more clear, it is known to you that the saying and doings of the Prophet ﷺ explains what is mentioned in the Quran. So the Prophet ﷺ would explain what is mentioned in the Quran. In the zakat, Allah Ta'ala mentioned, pay as zakat. The details of the zakat is also, all of it is mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ. How we pray, the number of rakahs, and the things we do inside the prayer is not mentioned in the Quran. It is explained by the Prophet ﷺ. Allah Ta'ala ordered us to pray, and the Prophet taught us how to pray ﷺ. So likewise, Allah Ta'ala ordered us to face the direction of the Kaaba. The Prophet ﷺ taught us how to face the direction of the Kaaba. How to determine it. What is the methodology? What methodology do you use to face the Kaaba? If it is mentioned in a certain way of ambiguity, then the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ makes it clear. It clarifies this ambiguity. So if we check, meaning ambiguity, by that meaning it can have more than one meaning. So if the person wouldn't know in the language, this statement can have several meanings. What meaning is intended? The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ would explain it. It does not mean that the Quran is not clear. The Quran is revealed in the clear Arabic language. But the language can bear several meanings. And the Prophet ﷺ would explain those. For example, if he was in a place south of the Kaaba, he would face north. If he was in a place, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, he would be in a place north of the Kaaba, he would face south. If he was in a place east of the Kaaba, then he would face west. And if he was in a place west of the Kaaba, then he would face east. And you know the Prophet ﷺ spent many years praying from different locations. So they knew how the Prophet would pray facing those locations, from those locations in terms of the Kaaba. This is what happened during the time of the companions. The land of Islam became much wider. The Muslims became far away from the Kaaba. They were not only spread in the Arabic Peninsula, but rather from China to the Atlantic Ocean. In all these countries, to determine facing the Kaaba, they only followed one way, one methodology. And that is to check what is their position, their location in relation to the Kaaba, and then face the Kaaba once you determine your location from it. For example, if they were between the north and the east from the Kaaba, so if you took it and you divided it into quadrants, so we said if you're north you face south, if you're east you face west, if you're west you face east, if you're south you face north. But what if you're in between? You're north, let's say you're in Australia, you're in the what quadrant would it be? You would be to the east, and you would be south of the Kaaba. You would be east and you would be south from the Kaaba. So it would be very easy. You would face north and west. Let's say if you're in Mongolia, what quadrant would it be? You would be north, east. So you face south, west. Let's say you're in London. What quadrant would it be? You're north, west. So you face south, east. And let's say you're in Chile. What quadrant would it be? You would be south, west. So you face north, east. And of course, people in Canada who are in north, west, and the people in Chile who are near the Arctic Ocean, the Arctic, what do you call it, continent, the Antarctica, they would not be facing both of them northeast. People in Canada and people in Chile. Because they're different quadrants. In their relation to the Kaaba, they're in different areas. So this is all of the scholars have similar statements about this issue. Abu Hanifa, Ash-Shafi'i, Imam Malik, and Imam Ahmad, all of them have similar statements regarding this issue. The methodology is the same in all of them in terms of the direction. Yes, where they differed is, do you face the direction in a general way, or do you have to be very precise in facing the building of the Kaaba itself? This is well known. It is not transmitted from them, from the companions. They looked into anything else pertaining to this issue. They did not take another methodology other than the mentioned methodology. So it is known from what they did that this is what should be followed. This is what they were taught by the Prophet ﷺ. Because if there was anything else pertaining to this issue, it would not have been permissible for the Prophet ﷺ to hide it from the people, not to mention it. If there was something, it would not be permissible for the Prophet ﷺ to hide it from the people. If something Allah ordered that we need in our prayers, he wouldn't hide it. He would mention it. And Allah Ta'ala praised the Prophet ﷺ that he fulfilled what Allah ordered him, and he fulfilled it in the best way, and he did not fall short in that. Allah made it clear in the Quran that the Prophet ﷺ conveyed all the basic rules of the religion of Islam. So when away from Mecca, the companions did not give any consideration to the distance of the Kaaba. No one amongst the companions looked into the issue of distance, or even the mujtahids, the top scholars. They did not look at the distance. Whether their location is close to the Kaaba or away from it, the companions did not talk about the shape of the earth. Although the Prophet ﷺ told us the shape of the earth, he showed with his honorable blessed hands, and he made an image, something like this, that shows that it is baydawi, like an egg, like an ostrich egg, or an egg shape. So the Muslims knew the shape of the earth, but despite that, they didn't get into the shape of the earth when they're talking about determining how to face the Kaaba. It is irrelevant. So the companions did not talk about the shape of the earth. They did not take that into consideration, nor did they check it, nor talk about it at all in terms of how to determine the Kaaba. They did not tackle it at all. They did not take it into consideration at all. They did not take into consideration the road, how long it is, how short it is. They did not take into consideration how close their location is to Mecca or how far it is. What is the distance? Nothing is transmitted from the companions nor the top scholars, the mujtahids, about this issue, except that they took into consideration where their position, their location was from the Kaaba, and they used that to determine how to face the direction of the Kaaba. Now, did they take the general direction as their target? Because we said, they all said to face the direction. Did they take it in the general direction? Or is it more precise of facing the Kaaba, the direction of, but the facing the direction, but the direction of the Kaaba itself, the building? This is something that they differed. We mentioned that Imam Shafi'i said that they have to face the direction of the Kaaba, the building itself, so it would be more precise. And Abu Hanifa said they have to face the direction and in a general way. So both of them face the direction, and they did not include distance. This is something that they differed, in which we will not we're not going to discuss now. But it's something easy, not a big difference between the two statements. After the companions, the Muslims expanded more and more. Despite that, they did not come up with any new way to face the Qibla. And you know, the rules of the religion does not change. No matter how many years passes, the rules of the religion stays the same. We're not like the Christians who after some time would change their book and write new things in it and change the rules. Or the Jews who did that. And likewise the other books that were changed by people. The religion of Islam is going to remain till the day of judgment, preserved, uncorrupted. Even some people that gets corrupted, but most of the people will still follow the belief in the methodology of the Prophet ﷺ until they die. When all the Muslims die, it is not because they became misguided, but rather a wind will come and they will die. And before that, they were still following the belief of La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, ordering the lawful and forbidding the unlawful until the end. This is the nation of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. This is something that he made dua for, and Allah accepted it, and this that differs his nation from the nations prior to him. And this is one of the reasons why this nation is praised. They're not going to corrupt and pervert the religion. This rule, the Imams mentioned the rules, and then likewise from centuries they did not change it. Despite that, they did not come up with a new way to face the Qibla. This was the time of the great Imams like Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad. When they talked about this issue, this is the only thing that they mentioned. It is copied from a Shafi'i that he said the term shatara mentioned in the verse refers to the direction. What is copied from Abu Hanifa is similar. Abu Hanifa, Mullah Ali Qari narrated from Abu Hanifa in his book. He came about 107 years after Abu Hanifa, Mullah Ali Qari. He mentioned a continuous chain going back to Abu Hanifa, that Abu Hanifa said, let the northern countries face south, let the southern countries face north. And we're talking about the prayer in the Qibla. Let the eastern countries face west, and let the western countries face east. So Abu Hanifa has a similar statement. Same thing was copied from Imam Ahmad So this is why, this is the way that they followed. And we're talking about, when we say Abu Hanifa, what year was Abu Hanifa born? In the year 80. When we say Imam Malik, what year was he born? In the year 93. When we say Imam Shafi'i, what year was he born? 150. And Imam Ahmad, 164. So you're talking about people, from them to the Prophet ﷺ is just a few people that they learn from, and that goes back to the Prophet ﷺ. And we have documents from them, their books and their students and their narrations documented well what their ijtihad and what their sayings were. So if somebody wants to follow the Salaf, these are the Salaf to follow. And Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah is not amongst the Salaf. The people who claim to be Salafi, they're following Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, and he's not amongst the Salaf. Let them follow Abu Hanifa or Shafi or Imam Malik or Imam Ahmad. So anyhow, they did not say, let us use geometry or what are mathematical calculations. The Prophet ﷺ, anyhow, they did not say we have to check the shape of the earth or its curvature, its distance, and how it affects it. They did not say, nor observe, nor refer to any of those issues, not due to their ignorance of these subjects. These subjects is not something, these subjects were there before the time of the Prophet ﷺ. These matters were known from the time of Greeks. This is not something that this was discovered nowadays. The Muslims knew about these issues, but the Prophet ﷺ, through revelation that he received, did not make these issues which were needed by Muslims in large. They're not used something that the Muslims in large needed them. These calculations that would be something that relied upon. The Muslims, many Muslims, I think in our country, what is the illiteracy rate? It is a huge amount, a big amount. It's probably more than 50%. So if this is the case, how would they be able to do these mathematical calculations? They wouldn't. And determining the rules in the religion is easy. They do not have to go to someone who knows these calculations for them to get answers in the religion. They would know. All they have to do is look at the sun. The sun rises from the east, they know this is the east. The sun sets in the west, sets in the west, they know this is the west. And once you know one direction, you know the other directions. If you're at nighttime, you look at the North Star, or you look at the South Star, and you would know the other directions. Easy. This is how our religion is. Allah Ta'ala made this religion easy to follow. Rather, Allah Ta'ala made these matters dependent on simple matters that everyone can know and implement. This is why, to determine the beginning of the lunar months and its end, to fast the Ramadan, for example, is not dependent on calculations. So the month, all you have to do is look. The Prophet even taught us, if it's cloudy, what to do. The eye is something, all those who can see, they can determine when is the beginning of the month, when is the end, when do I begin. They don't have to go to certain group of people that only know, they don't know the certain knowledge, then these people would give them the judgment. No. Anyone can look, who knows, can look and determine it. Very simple in the calculations. Likewise in the Qibla. Likewise facing the Qibla. The Shara made it based on simple issue that anyone with minimum can realize them. It is easy to watch the crescent. Did it appear or not? It is something easy. Anyone can do it. To see the stars. It's easy to determine the direction of the north or the south. Where does the sun rise? Where does it set? You just look and you know the eastern direction and the western direction. And you know where you are in terms of the Kaaba, and you make the proper determination. So it is not like some people say nowadays. These people, group of people that came out around the 1970s, they came and they started saying in North America, and they're in the northwestern quadrant in terms of relation of the Kaaba. They say rather you have to face north, or north and slightly east of north. So if you're in Canada, they say you need to still face north, although the Kaaba is in southeast from them. And they say you have to face northeast. And they have no right to say that. They're contradicting the Quran, the saying of the Prophet ﷺ, and the saying of the scholars, the teaching of the companions, and it's illogical what they say. How would it be? People in Canada and South Africa would be praying in the same direction. It doesn't make any sense. So it is not like some people nowadays make this issue dependent on something very complicated. We said it's dependent on something very easy. Allah Ta'ala made it easy. You dependent on observation, and anyone can do it. They made it dependent on very deep calculations that very few people know. How are you going to know the distance between 2 points on the earth, and taking account its curvature, and taking account all these factors? How would a regular Muslim know that? Very few, even people who are college educated, if you ask them to make that determination, they cannot make it. So they made it a condition on those issues that Allah Ta'ala did not obligate us. The Shara is not based upon that. They came up with new definitions. Even for the term direction, they came up with new definitions. Instead of saying north is the direction of the North Star, they said, no, north is the direction of the axis of the earth with such a degree. Axis of the earth. Now they're saying the earth is tilted and this, and there's an axis, and then this axis is tilted, and so to such a degree, and this based on north. They came up with new definitions of the term north, which the Muslims agreed. Allah Ta'ala said in Al-Quran, وَبِالنَّجْمِ هُمْ يَهْتَدُونَ. Imam Shafi'i said, the strongest, the best way to determine the northern direction is from the North Star. As Allah Ta'ala mentioned in Al-Quran. They left that way. They came up with new directions that they followed non-Muslims, and talking about axis of the earth and degrees and things that they only claim to understand. This is not original definition that the Arabs knew what the religious the Arabs and the Muslims knew that what the religious rules of Allah ordained. So facing Al-Qibla, determining the beginning and the end of the month of Ramadan to fast, the matters that every Muslim needs on a daily basis are built and dependent upon easy matters and not complicated calculations, geometry, mathematics. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna nahnu ummatun ummi, la naktubu wa la nahsub. He said, we are a nation that do not rely on calculations when it comes to the determining the lunar month, when it begins and when it ends. As narrated by Al-Bukhari and others, which means we are a nation that does not depend on calculations in what is written to determine these matters. This hadith does not mean that we do not know how to calculate. No, the scholars, they went deep into teaching mathematics, but not in the issue of finding out when the months begin or end. Otherwise, how does one know the months, etc.? Rather, we Muslims do not depend on such calculations in complicated matters, in the issues that are not, that the Muslims are in need of it in large. If we take just this into consideration, this is what should be, and this is what should be taken into consideration, then I pose the question, if one of the companions or one of the Salaf came to the era, to this era, like Abu Hanifa, or like Abdullah ibn Abbas, or Umar radiallahu anhu, one of them came to this era, how would he face the Qibla? If he came in this era, in this location, in North America, how would he determine the Qibla? It is very clear, based on the evidence that they used prior, it is very clear how would they act if they were here now. If one is not stubborn, then the answer is very clear what the answer would be. Because it is clear for him that North America is west and north of the Kaaba. So he would be facing south and east. Depending on where he would change his direction. He would be either going more south, he would be facing east, but a little bit more south or less south, depending on how far north he is. But he's definitely west. All of North America is west. So therefore he would, depending on where he is in this area, he would face east in either slightly east or more towards the either slightly south of east or more south of east, depending on where he is. So that's, if one of them came, this is what they would do. The way that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the companions and the tabi'een followed, this is the way that we follow. If someone comes to us and says to us, well, distances were shorter at that time because North America was not known to them, and this is a longer distance because nowadays we say we discovered North America, that doesn't change the rule of Islam. And what they put applies. It can be implemented nowadays. So why would somebody change the rules that they came with? Their statement still applies. It can be implemented. Why would somebody change it? We tell him, this is something that the Prophet ﷺ did not mention about counting distances. And what is your distance? How many meters, how many miles you are away from it? He did not order us to do that. And the scholars didn't do it, and we don't do it. Had this been something to rely upon in our religion, then the Prophet ﷺ would not have ignored mentioning it. We do not want to come up with ways that the Prophet ﷺ did not mention. Moreover, what did the Prophet told us to do? What the Prophet told us to do is applicable. So why would we leave it? How physically you can apply this rule? If you're west, you face east. If you're northwest, you face southeast. This can be applied. Why would we leave that statement? There's no reason to leave it. What pilots do and what routes to take, what does that have to do with us facing in our prayer? A pilot can do circles in the plane if he wants. What does that have to do with our prayers? So, and distances is irrelevant in this issue. So, whether they save gas going north or going south, it's irrelevant. We do not come up with a way that contradicts the way of the Prophet ﷺ. This is not permissible. This is what we say. This is what we rely on. An easy way, with all its simplicity, with all its clarity, a way that the righteous Salaf accepted and they understood from the religious text. There are 2 or 3 matters that we should mention because nowadays some people talk about it. What can we do? People talk about it. Some people distract others by what they say. I will talk in brief about these matters. I will not go into a lot of details because of time constraints. And it is enough for someone who has the real intention to follow the truth and he's not stubborn, then this would be enough for him. You can gain more benefit from your time by talking with someone who will listen than spending all your time with someone who's stubborn and they're not going to listen to you. Someone might say, I face the northeast direction there from let's say from Canada or from North America, any of the states in the United States. They say, from this area, I choose to face northeast. They say the earth is like a circle. There's a problem with that statement. Because when did the scholars of Islam say, take a straight line, take a globe with you, and then take a line and a string, and then they say, okay, go over the line, over the curvature of this little, what do you call it, globe, small globe that they have. They didn't talk about this. Rather, a straight line, they say it's not a curved line, which follows the curvature of the earth. So it is not permissible to take their statements and use it out of context while giving them other definitions. So when the scholars talked about a straight line, they're not talking about curved lines. It's very easy and very clear. So they take this line, this going over the curvature of the earth, and they call that straight line. And that's not what the scholars said. So you cannot say that they said straight line while you're giving another definition to the straight line that they defined. Some people talk about a tunnel. They say if we had a tunnel let's take from Philadelphia as an example, in the United States, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia in the state of Pennsylvania, in USA. They said if you had a tunnel from Philadelphia to Mecca, then they make projections on the computer, and then they show that this tunnel, according to a plane on the surface of the earth, then will have a shape of a curve, which at the beginning this tunnel will be facing northeast, according to their projections. I do not know what to say. Which Imam said such a thing? Where did they get such a statement? Why did they choose these coordinates? And why did they say that north is the direction veering off saying those things that they say about axis and degrees and all of that. So they're not talking about the same thing when they're making their projections and their thing. They're not agreeing on the definitions that the scholars came with. That's why their result is something else. Who said you need to come up with a projection? Where is it mentioned in the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and the saying of the scholars? If we choose other coordinates, then the direction of this tunnel will be southeast. So they choose specific coordinates to come up with conclusions that they want. And this is not how it should be done. Always remember that east is where the sun rises, very simple. The west is where the sun sets. The north and the south are perpendicular angles to the east and the west. These are the definitions for the directions according to the Arabs and the Muslims and the religion, and not other definitions. So you know east and west, you know north and south. North and south are perpendicular to east and west. And they did not come up with degrees and axis and these things. In brief, the method that they propose is not the way of the Prophet ﷺ. It is not way of the companion. It is not way of the followers. In all the Muslim countries, the masajid were built not based on their methods. This is something known to everyone. If someone says, the scholars said it is valid to face the area above the Kaaba. Okay, here we go. They have a saying that the sun is above the Kaaba twice a year. So the scholars talked about if a person is in a well, when he's facing the Kaaba, does he have to now face, because he's lower in elevation, does he have to move his chest and face up while he's facing the Kaaba? The scholar said no. It doesn't matter if he's facing the Kaaba or the air underneath it, or if he's on top of a mountain, does he have to face down? They said no, because it is enough that he is facing the Kaaba and the air above it. But they're talking about a specific case and not in a general way. And they did not say you take the sun as your area that you need to face. The scholars didn't say, when they said air above, did they say this, take the sun instead of the Kaaba, take the sun as your aim? No. Keep that in mind. So if someone said, the scholars said it is valid to face the area above the Kaaba and the ground underneath it in the prayer. They claim that 2 days during the year when the sun is exactly above the Kaaba, because the sun goes above the Kaaba twice, it's directly above the Kaaba twice a year. They say, and if you're standing in North America, if you look at the sun, then it can be, and if we're able to see it from certain parts of North America, you're able to see the sun in your North America, then if you face the sun at that time, then you will be facing the northeastern direction. Subhanallah. Look at now where they end up. They say, okay, you face twice a year, the sun goes above the Kaaba, and if you face the sun, you'll be facing in northeast direction, therefore you have to face northeast. Who said you have to face the sun? And who said you have to wait twice a year to determine how to face the Qibla? So you have to pray Dhuhr, you're going to wait for next year or the middle of the year to come to determine how to face the Qibla? And who said, which one of the scholars, when they said air above the Kaaba, which one of the scholars said you have to take the sun as your Qibla? I thought that Muslims say take the Kaaba as your Qibla. So they do this to swindle the people. They're swindlers. So So the Qibla, so be attentive. Facing the area above the Kaaba or the ground underneath the Kaaba is something which is not mentioned in the Quran, nor mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ. But it is something that the scholars deduced from the religious texts. It is not a general statement inclusive to every case. What shows that the proof for that very quickly and easily is that the Imams had difference of opinions about praying on top of the Kaaba. So it is not something that all the Imams agreed, because it's something deduced first of all, and they didn't agree upon it. Because some Imams, they said the one who's praying on top of the roof of the Kaaba, they had a difference of opinion on that. So if they all agreed the air above the Kaaba, then why would they have a difference of opinion about the one who's praying on top of the roof of the Kaaba? They're not in agreement on it. Some scholars said yes, some scholars said no. So it is not a general rule, and it's specific. It is not to be taken in every case. So if someone stands on top of the Kaaba and prays, then the Imams had difference of opinions about this issue. Had it been the case that facing the area above the Kaaba is valid in all the cases, they wouldn't have a difference of opinion in that. Rather, when they made that statement, it was in relation to the one who was praying and he was above the Kaaba in elevation. Let's say, example, he was on top of a mountain. They wanted to show that he does not have to lower his face and chest downwards. They said it is enough for him to face the Kaaba, because in this case he would be facing the direction of the Kaaba. This is what is requested in the rules of the religion. Likewise, if he was lower in elevation from the Kaaba, for example, a well or like a valley that was very low, deep, he does not have to keep his face and chest in an upper direction to face the Kaaba, because it is enough for him to face the Kaaba. This is what they meant by the statement facing the area above and beneath the Kaaba. They did not want to say that what is above the Kaaba has the same judgment as the Kaaba in every case, in every place or situation. This is that it is a branch coming out from an origin. So it's a branch coming from a base, from an origin, which is the verse of the Quran that we mentioned in the beginning of the class. So nothing can contradict that base, that verse of the Quran. If it is rejected. So this branch that's coming out from this origin, from this base, the one who knows the knowledge of usul al-fiqh knows that a branch or a deduction to be valid, it must not contradict the origin. When you deduce from a rule something, for this deduction to be valid, there are conditions, and among those conditions is for the deduction not to contradict the origin. So if you deduce from a rule what contradicts the rule, then this deduction is false. It is not valid. You cannot rely on it. So if the origin, the rule, is to face the Kaaba using the direction from your location, and someone comes up with a deduction from this rule that leads to say that one needs to take another direction or distance, then this deduction is invalid because it contradicts the origin, the rule. So if they say, well, because of the sun and then the degrees and this, and they finally say, they come up with a deduction that contradicts the rule. It is rejected. The verse is confirmed, so the rule is confirmed. The origin is confirmed. There's no doubt about the origin. The verse of the Quran. So it's confirmed. One must face the direction of the Kaaba and not the shortest distance. That's the rule. From the verse, direction is mentioned. Shatara, we said the scholars said, Shatara means direction, and distance is not mentioned. And they did not come up, they did not say you have to follow. They actually rejected following distances. So if somebody comes up with based on their methodology, they come up with something, a deduction that contradicts this base, that is rejected. So one must face the direction of the Kaaba. So in Philadelphia, Philadelphia is north of the Kaaba and west of the Kaaba. So the position of the Kaaba in reference to the Philadelphia is south of east. This is what the verse establishes as a rule, and the innovated way leads to a face to direction other than that direction. So this is invalid. This is an invalid deduction, and one cannot rely on it. There's a problem with their theory. They say that twice a year the sun is directly above the Kaaba, and if you face it from North America, then you would be facing northeast. There's a problem with that statement. If you take a point in that same line, which is above the Kaaba also, then you would be facing another direction. So you have a line. They say the sun is up here. If you're North America, they say if you face it, you're facing northeast. But if you take different areas of this line, which is also above the Kaaba, you're going to be facing different directions. In one, you'll be facing northeast, and another you'll be facing east, and another you'll be facing slightly south of east. So you have a problem. Now, which area above the Kaaba are you taking? They choose the sun, as if the sun is their Qibla. And Allah Ta'ala did not order us to face the sun. So if it was correct rule as they describe, to face what is above the Kaaba, then there are different directions and different points of the same line. This is because they took what the scholars said out of context. If they left it in its context, then they wouldn't have arrived to this false conclusion. So according to what they are saying, there would be 3 directions to face. And the Muslims do not accept that. They ignore the context, which lead them to the wrong deduction. We do not need to mention this anyway. It is enough to mention that the way of the Prophet ﷺ, the tabi'een, the companions, the tabi'een and their followers, I'm only mentioning this so that if you talk to someone who has a good heart and they're not stubborn and they want to know the truth, this person will benefit. And Allah knows best. So the matter is simple. And there are fatwas that are given. They ignore those fatwas by religious scholars, and they rely on calculations of non-Muslims in a matter that is pertaining to the prayer. Allah Ta'ala ordered us to pray. The Muslims have been praying for from the time of the Prophet ﷺ till now over 1,000 years in different areas and different locations, including this country, and they've been following this method, except since around the 1970s, a little bit before, a little after, they started changing this way, and their way contradicts the ijma' of the scholars, and it is rejected. The one who prays from North America, who faces north or a little bit east of north, their prayer is invalid. They need to make up those those prayers. They need to make up those prayers. Facing the Qibla is a condition, just like wudu is a condition, just like covering the awrah is a condition. Without it, the prayer is not valid. And it is not enough that they follow a group of people that are, they say, is majority in their area, because we're not obligated to follow the majority of a group in an area. If you want to follow the majority, then you follow the majority of the scholars, and you follow the majority of the Muslim nation. All of the Muslim nation choose this methodology. So if you are in front of the Kaaba and you're west of it, you face east, facing the Kaaba. If you happen to go further, you take a trip and you're driving and then you get to Egypt and you're still west, directly west, you face east. And you keep going further into Africa, northern African countries. Each time you're stopping, if you're going directly west, you're facing directly east. You get to Morocco and those areas, and you stop and you want to pray, you face east. Then you get to the ocean, you hop on a boat, and each time you have to stop and pray, you face east, you're going directly west. Then you reach Florida, and when you want to pray, you face east. Why would you change your direction to north? What are they determining to change their direction when they reach Florida in North America? Now they want to face north instead of east. All this way they were facing east. What did they use to determine that? How would you determine that? They say there's a group of scientists and mathematical calculators that they know how to calculate distances over the surface of the earth between different points of the earth. Who told you that you need to calculate? Were you calculating that as you're going? In that case, everywhere you go, you need to know what is your distance from the Kaaba. So before you go, you say, okay, how many steps I'm taking and how far I'm going? No one obligated them that. They're swindlers, swindling the Muslims, telling them to follow us, and they're giving no proof. Follow our proof. What is their proof? Show us those calculations that you're basing it on, and the calculations are wrong. But the Muslims didn't even know those calculations. And so some people are swindled by them and they're choosing. So if an area, in one city, all the people were wrong, and you were the only correct person in that city, Allah has commanded you to obey Him and not to leave that path. So if you're in North America and in a group of people all of them choose a wrong way, then you're obligated to follow what Allah ordered. You're not allowed to change. I remember telling one person this. He said, son, you're right. But why don't you get everybody to change and we'll change together with them. So I told him, uncle, you're going to be in the grave by yourself, and you have to answer for your deed. You change and let others follow you. So when we're following majority, you need to follow the majority of the Muslim nation, not a majority in a certain area. If you are in an area and the majority of the people degraded Umar radiallahu anhu, you do not follow them. If the majority in an area, they degraded the wife of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Aisha radiallahu anha, no matter how many they are in that city, you do not follow them. Rather, you follow the majority of the Muslims who praised Umar and who praised Aisha radiallahu anha. You cannot, following the majority, having unity, it does not mean you leave out the religion of Allah. You have unity on what Allah commanded. And whoever goes away from the commandments of Allah is disuniting the Muslims. Not having unity in disobedience, having unity in sin. So their way, whatever they say, whether they say face the distance, is rejected. If they say follow the majority, that's rejected. You follow the majority of the Muslim nation, which is following this methodology. Not a majority in this area, in North America. And prior to that, the majority was the opposite. Why did they change it in the first place? Prior to that, the Muslims were facing east and slightly south of east from North America, depending on how north and south they are. And Allah knows best. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad Taha al-Amin. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وذكرنا ما نسينا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا من القائمين الصابرين واشرح لنا صدورنا ونور قلوبنا واجعل القرآن الكريم ربيعا لقلوبنا ونورا لأبصارنا وأكرمنا برؤية ولقاء سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.